Let's see. Where was you? Jaquin, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, asking thoughts on playing Arizona and Kansas in a span of a week, which is something I have thought of. I mean, we're just talking about the schedule, Chronic, of Indiana's being really cranked up after having, you know, playing the Sisters of the Poor a lot, mostly during Archie's tenure. Now, not only are you adding Arizona and Kansas in the span of a week. We were just talking about the potential of who knows where they're going to get in from the ACC. It could be Duke, it could be North Carolina, Miami, and then you have the Gavitt games. So their non-con schedule is taking an absolute rocket ride up this season.
Yeah, this is basically what we said last year when the non-conference came out. I mean, I think everybody was basically willing to give Woody a pass for going a little bit lighter on the non-conference, um, knowing that it was everybody's first go around together and kind of wanting to get a feel for what he was working with and where his team stood. But as you know, as we saw on Selection Sunday, that non-conference strength of schedule came back to bite him a little bit. Indiana was 319th according to Pomeroy in their non-conference schedule last year, and that largely helped contribute, at least put them in Dayton. Now, granted, losses at Syracuse didn't help, nor did the one at Wisconsin or Penn State for that matter. We can go on and on down the list. But Zach and I did a pod last week that I didn't know we were going to be doing last we talked, but we dropped one talking about the non-conference schedule, and this is a blue blood schedule for a team that aspires to be considered among the blue bloods again. It's never wavered in their insistence that they belong there. And I think you see a team that's confident in who they are right now, a staff that's comfortable and willing to push themselves and test themselves and just see how good they can be. And I've long been a strong proponent of aggressive scheduling. As an IU soccer fan, I've spent my entire lifetime watching IU soccer play the best in the nation, year in, year out, anytime, anywhere, home, away. It didn't matter, because the mindset that iron's going to sharpen iron. And if you're good enough, tournament's going to work itself out at the end of the season if the results are there to support it. But at the end of the day, you want to test your guys, you want to challenge them, you want to grow them and make them better. And you can't grow without getting put in uncomfortable positions. So I can't think of a better way to put this team in a more uncomfortable position than take them to the fog, than to go play Arizona out in the desert. And then I would not be surprised, as Zach mentioned in the podcast, if we see, perhaps North Carolina and maybe Villanova get thrown into the mix there. At the very least, Indiana has perpetually punched up when it comes to these national made for TV events like the Gavitt games, like the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Generally it's competitive balance, but because of the eyeballs Indiana draws, they always tend to draw a higher opponent than perhaps what they're competitively slated at. Well, this year Indiana should expect to be, considered among the top contenders in the Big Ten. So I'd fully expect to see the top competition from both the ACC and the Big East.
Kevin, that's a great point about Indiana potentially adding Villanova to that lineup. I didn't even, think of that with the Big East. I'm like, oh my God, can you imagine with the ACC? You could take your pick of Duke or North Carolina and Miami if you want to, but Duke or North Carolina. But can you imagine if they ended up playing in that month, Kansas, Arizona, Duke, and Villanova?
Villanova, yeah, first year coach too, with Jay Wright retiring. Another team with a first year coach that I think would be interesting too, and it would get Woody in the area I know where he's talked about wanting to go. Is what about Seton Hall and Shaheen Holloway? I think that would be another interesting if they ended up sending them to New Jersey in that area, that New York, New Jersey area. That would be another good matchup. I was thinking as far as like a Big East team is concerned, but. Yeah, Seton Hall or Villanova, one of those two programs that'd be pretty neat. A traditional Big East program.
Well, either way, Chronic Indiana is going to be playing a non-con schedule next year that looks a lot like it used to and a lot like it should. Trace Jackson Davis made a great comment yesterday that goes along with something I say all the time. He said that when Indiana is good, college basketball is good. And I always say that doesn't matter what sport you're talking about. People want those they want those great rivalries. They want they want to see Indiana, Kentucky, and Kansas, and Duke, and North Carolina, and all that. They want that. And Indiana has just kind of been the odd one out of there for a while, but this could be the time for them to make that reemerge. The sleeping giant may have awoken.
Yeah, it's funny you say Kentucky. This is also something in the non-conference schedule that fills a void Indiana's been has been searching for a decade now with the loss of the Kentucky game. They have needed that nationally relevant opponent in the non-conference schedule. The timing, that second week ish in December gives you one last great test before the Christmas break and New Year's, and then the full on resumption of the Big Ten schedule again. Um, I don't know that we're going to see Kansas perpetually on the schedule as a permanent placeholder there, but I think this is a great jumping off point. And I think it's one thing I mentioned in the pod last week that I've continued to pound this drum. I think it's great to see Indiana expanding its opponents westward. There's been so much focus on the ACC, on the Big East, or at least the northeastern part of the country, as far as how Indiana likes to schedule, where it likes to create those exposures. Quite frankly, basketball is getting a whole lot better in the West than it perhaps is in the East right now. I think the Big 12 is absolutely a big pickup. And if you're going to do it, you might as well do the best in Kansas. And then, I think even expanding it further with Arizona puts Indiana in a market that we don't normally compete a lot in, that we don't normally get a lot of exposure in, be it versus Arizona or, playing in Vegas is going to be awesome. I'm unfortunately committed that weekend. There's no way I'm going to be able to pull the Fog and Vegas in back to back. But I just think it's an awesome opportunity for Indiana fans to get a chance to go out and play in the desert a little bit, to go live it up, and more importantly than anything, for the team to get some great national exposure against an opponent that we don't get to tussle with a whole lot. But at the end of the day, I think this is a sign of a program that's in a really, really good spot right now when it's willing to do things, such as what we see so far reflect in the schedule. When you've got a guy like Trace Jackson Davis choosing to come back, it's just the ultimate vote of confidence in Mike Woodson, what he's doing, what he's building. And more importantly than anything, music to my ears, the accountability in Trace Jackson Davis's in his messaging yesterday. This is a team that's willing to own up who they are, what they want to be, and what it's going to take to get there. So I can't say I've been this excited probably since the 12-13 season.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say is fans are not everybody, but I think that Joaquin, not to pick on you, Indiana is not going to. Well, that's the wrong one. Indiana is not going to be a preseason top 10 team. You got to get that out of your mind. They might be they're a definitive top 25 team. I don't know that they'll be inside the top 20 at the start of the season because the media is going to be on a wait and see. Attitude is for Indiana, but Indiana will have the opportunity to play themselves right up there from that. But Indiana is not starting off inside the top 10, and at least not in my opinion.
I wouldn't be surprised to see him top 15. I think with the with a conference player of the year candidate, potential national player of the year candidate, certainly going to be a Naismith candidate to start the season. I think with the way Xavier Johnson finished, I think with the additions coming in this year, I think Indiana is probably deserving of it. But at the end of the day, and this is what makes sports fandom great, is we get to spend months debating it, and none of it matters a single iota. I mean, it doesn't. It literally.
It's the truth. It's the absolute
means
truth.
nothing. And I will gladly speak out of both sides of my mouth on this issue
Yeah.
and crow about whether or not we are properly rated. And I'll tell you in the same breath, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter until they roll the ball out and they actually play somebody. I think the big thing going forward for this team is the belief. component of it. And that's one thing that rankings do is they reaffirm that belief that other people see what you see in yourselves, in your squad, and that you're deserving of a look at least. And I think Indiana deserves a look, and I think the expectations are going to be justifiably high. And like I said, with what we heard from Trace, I think you've got a team that for the first time in a long time looks poised to display some strong leadership. One of the biggest things that you hear coaches talk about, no matter what sport, you want to be successful in college, you got to get old and you got to stay old. And for all the additions, for all the retentions in this offseason, I don't think it's lost that Mike Woodson has not only been able to stay old, but will likely continue to at least in the foreseeable future, with some of the retentions he had. Looking at the Tamar Bates, looking at the Jordan Geronimos, looking at those guys that are going to be expected to step into leadership roles when Race and Trace and X leave. I think that's absolutely critical for program continuity, for maintaining success and culture and identity. That you have guys that stick with the program, matriculate from the ground up, and can transfer those lessons, those teachings, that culture onto the next class that comes in. So every year is going to have a huge premium placed on the new guys getting brought up to speed quickly with it. But I think when you've got a core group of leaders like this team's going to have, it's going to put them in a great position to get the guys up to speed and on board with the program.
Well, you've got experience, you've got depth. I think the big question is, do you have shooting? I think that's still the huge question mark. And I still think you have to look a little bit at recent history. I would have them 20 to 25. I would have them somewhere in that range, and maybe show a little bit more during the non-conference schedule to see if they can climb to the top 15. But I do know I'll probably have a vote again this year. And if I did have that vote, I would probably put them in that neighborhood. If I did, depending on the rest of the country too, you have to factor that in too. But I do think that, they're definitely going to be a contender for the Big Ten title for sure this year.
I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody.